Hey everyone. I somehow managed to not record an intro at all for my Throne of Glass Part 2, and this is it. I finished the series like 6 months ago, sometime in May, I think, of last year. It's a little late. I am very behind on getting stuff done with this. This is the intro for that video, and um, this is the video for the last 4 books in the series. So, Queen of Shadows, oh god, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and Kingdom of Ash. And this covers those 4 books. There are a lot of this is very spoiler filled. If you haven't read the books and you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this video. But if you haven't read the books and or have and you do want to hear about spoilers and my thoughts about all of the specific things that have happened, this is for you. I personally like to find spoiler videos if I want to, if I'm like on the fence about whether I'm going to DNF a book or a series or something, and I find it really helpful. So that's why I chose to do it this way. I don't know that I will always do spoiler filled videos, but and these books have been out for, the first one at least has been out for like 15 years probably. Maybe not that long, but almost. Yeah, that's kind of why I felt it was at least a little bit appropriate. I'll put timestamps of where each book is if you want to hear about specific books only. I'll also link part 1 of my Throne of Glass reread slash completion. I had read Queen of Shadows before, but everything after I had not read, so that's the only one in this video that I had that was a reread. Everything else was read for the first time. Anyway, I will go ahead and get into it.
All right, so I've made it 175 pages into Queen of Shadows. I somehow only a quarter of the way through this book. Definitely did not make it all the way through this series in time for release day, but since that's today. But yeah, I forgot how much of a dick Kel is in this. And I think I think he's just taking his frustrations out on her. A couple of the points are valid that he's made when he first sees Aelin after she returns, and he makes it very clear that he doesn't trust her. So it's just I don't know, she's meeting his energy. So I don't see. He's just being a dick. Erwin being back in the picture at all is kind of painful because he's just straight up manipulative, narcissistic, gaslighting asshole, and you're just yeah, someone needs to meet you in a dark alley. It's finally starting to pick up for me. And I remember really enjoying this book. I think this was probably the favorites of all the ones that I read the first time around. The world just expands so much, and the conflict expands so much. Things are finally culminating into the main conflict. I feel like this is going to be the last setup book, and then Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms, which I'm going to tandem read. They're going to be the initial fight, and then Kingdom of Ash is going to be the fallout and repercussions of whatever happens in those books. So we'll see. I obviously have to finish this first. Bits and pieces are coming back to me. I remember stuff about Lysandra and things that she reveals later in the book. I have a really sneaking suspicion that Astrid is gonna reveal something to Manon about something that Manon's grandmother made Astrid do. I could just be making that up. As I try to remember, and I'm grasping at straws, trying to be oh, this could happen. Maybe this happened. Am I remembering that? Am I thinking of another book? Who knows? I'm definitely enjoying this book the most. I feel like I am liking them more and more as I go along. I'm enjoying this so far. I, again, have questions about her out. It's just bands of leather. I get that they're supposed to be leather pants, and it's supposed to be that fancy outfit that Arabin made for her. But also, talk about groomy. Forget Rowan being groomy. That's only because he's however old he is. It probably hasn't realized that they're like mates or whatever. Arobin though. Arobin is so creepy and groomy. He will deserve every bit of whatever's coming to him. I'm really liking Manon still. I think she's one of my favorite characters in this entire series so far. We've just met Elide. Elide. I'm gonna just say Elide because that's what is in my brain. And then they've just rescued Adion and run into Dorian for the first time. I don't know if you can see, but they're watching all the hot goss outside. All right, so it has been a really been a real long time, a very long overdue update for Queen of Shadows. So I'd stopped where she sent Lorcan into the sewers and was like beginning her plan to get the amulet of Orinth from Arobin and to like kill him and everything like that. When I'm reading this, I'm really entertained. I'm really invested. Like, I want to know what happens. So I put it down at the end of January. It's been almost 2 months since I put this down. I was starting to get to the point where I was like, do I care? But I was like, no, I want to finish this. I bought the books. I bought the rest of the books. So I want to see what happens. I was getting a little worried that I wasn't like super pressed to pick this back up. And like now that I have, I'm like, okay, I want to know what's going on. Like I'm like a little bit more like reinvested in everything. So I'm finally back invested in this. I got to page 506. So I'm on chapter 64. I have like 140 pages left. I think I'm going to get through this today. They've killed Arobin. I think I remembered that Lysandra did it. I forgot that she switched the wills. I forgot that she met Manon in this one. Like, I forgot that Manon and Aelin crossed paths so early. And then I forgot that Dorian also crossed paths with her. Yeah, I remembered up to like Arobin being killed, and I remember like the end of this. I don't necessarily know that I remember the chunk in the middle. I know there's something to do with Caltaine, and then there's something to do with like the castle exploding and Dorian having a moment. I did completely forget about the Vogue princes being scared of Manon and her eyes. So I'm really interested to see how that gets explained. And it did come out from Astrid about Manon's grandmother, which like we already knew she was a cunt, but I feel like that's like too nice of a way to use that word. But that's one of my favorite words. So it seems like insulting to the word to use it to refer to Manon's grandmother. Just complete disregard for life. I was really sad that Astrid didn't go back to the hunter. I don't know if he's still alive, but from the sounds of it, I don't think so. I really hope that Manon does something stupid, which it sounds like she's going to. I hope they rescue Elide. And I hope Lorcan isn't lying about being there to like help them. It seems really sus. So they just rescued Lysandra and she just fought with Manon to get Kale back. And then Rowan took the arrow for her. Manon had the conversation with Astrid and was like, all right, time to do something stupid. Elide got captured by fucking Vernon. I think I want to get this done and start on the new stuff. So I will update once I've read the last chunk. Hopefully get to stuff that I haven't read before. I have to say that of the stuff that I've read, there's not much that I want to reread. I might be clearing off a couple shelves, or well, a shelf, knowing that I'm sure there's some emotional stuff that's going to happen in the last 3 books. I'm like reserving judgment on whether to keep the books or not. Pretty sure Manon is the best character in this entire series. This feel like it would feel like really blasphemous, but I'm really tempted to take out the all of the Manon sections and like glue them together and bind them into one book. I saw the other day on Instagram this illustration that someone did, and I'll have to find it because it was stunning. And it was Manon and Abraxos's like first flight, and it was just beautiful. And I was just like, oh my god, I kind of actually want a print of it because it was so pretty. If I find it, I'll put it in here, and then I'll like obviously tag the artist and like tag them in the description and everything. So, but I'm gonna go read is what I'm gonna do. I did want to come on and say that I had finished Queen of Shadows. I really liked the ending of this one. I felt like it really sets up the remainder of the series. At the very least, the next two books, which are Empire of Storms, which I think is technically the sixth one, and then the seventh is Tower of Dawn. But I'm doing a tandem read and reading them just as like their own book. But yeah, I really liked like Manon coming back to see Dorian and kind of like how she warned Aelin and how Aelin was like able to save Dorian. I had forgotten about the king also being under control. Like as I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, I do vaguely remember this happening. It was kind of bittersweet because it's like it explains why he's been the way he is, but then also like Dorian now doesn't have the chance to like ever learn more about his father like before. I was really glad that Manon went back for a lead and kind of confronted her grandmother. At least not she at least figured out what her grandmother was up to. Oh, and then I also really liked Lysandra as the snow leopard. That was like kind of poetic justice. I'm kind of shipping her and Adian a little bit. I'll have to see. That's kind of the direction where I think this is going. And that she vommed on Lorcan when after he was being kind of a dick. It seemed necessary. Now that I've finished this, I am on to all of the books that I have not read yet. So that'll be pretty exciting. Unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to read these at home because like these are fat. These are fat books. So Empire of Storms is 689 pages, and Tower of Dawn 660 pages. That's like 1,300 pages of reading. I have good company right now. So I have made pretty good progress on my tandem read so far. So I am 133 pages or 13 chapters into Empire of Storms. They made it to Terrasen, met Darrow, who, like, obviously he's a twat. I mean, like, valid points, but also a twat. I think he could have made the same points without being an ass about it. Rowan went to get Dorian. Rifthold fell in the attack. Manon saved Dorian along with Rowan, of course, but they made it to Ilium. It's on page 126. There's a line that said Ilium used to be the stronghold of the Mycenaeans, and I was like, you mean the Greeks? Also Ilium as in Troy? Is this where we're going with this? Like, okay, that's new. There are times where I think she just like picks and chooses really random pieces of like myth and history from different pantheons and cultures and like mashes them together. And I'm like, sometimes it works really well because it's like, oh, this is like clearly like this civilization or culture. And it's fine because you're like, okay, like that's where you're getting your inspiration. But then stuff like this happens and you're just like, what? Yeah. Do you have something to say? So we just got the chapter where Rowan agreed to teach Dorian a little bit about how to control his magic and everything. They're on their way to Skulls Bay. I think it'll be a fun time. Hopefully, it's a good time. I'm actually really, really enjoying all of the Tower of Dawn sections. We are 10 chapters in, also on page 133. I think this might be my favorite book so far, but it's also like really reiterating in my mind how much I love desert fantasy. It's so different from everything else in the series. I love that it's in an entirely different place. I love that it's an entirely different culture. And I think it's going to be a lot of character growth for Kale in particular. My theory is that Irene and Kale are going to go back and Nesrin is going to stay with Sartok. Whoever flies, she's either staying or she's dead by the end of this book. That's my theory. I'm going to assume that she stays. Hello. What are you doing? You just doing noodle things? I want more of this. Like, yes, I want to know. Yes, I want more Manon, but like, this is so much for me, so much better. Like I love it when you get a character just like outside of their norm because it forces them to like adapt and grow. And I love seeing characters taken out of their existing situation and given the opportunity to like do something else with their time and their effort. But then like for this, it's again like someone being physically healed but also like mentally and emotionally healed and coming to terms with a lot of the things that they've done and like things that they're running from for Irene. I think I might have to read some desert fantasy after this. I don't know what it is about desert fantasy that makes me love it so much. I don't know. There's just something about Tower of Dawn that is like, I think it's because Irene is not necessarily one of like your typical Moss heroines. I was thinking about it today and I was like, man, all of her heroines combined would make like a well-bred English young lady. Aylin plays the pianoforte. Farah paints. I assume she draws too, but Nesta is very well read. By their powers combined, that would make a very stabby young English lady. They're all very like murdery. Anyway, that's like such an irrelevant tangent. Oh, I didn't talk anything at all about this one. They have arrived in Antica and he has met with Irene and she was not super nice and he was like, she's not going to treat me. She goes back and then they learn a little bit more about kind of the political situation, how the succession works, and you learn about the youngest having been either killed or having committed suicide. You see some of the personalities and the relationships of the potential heirs. Like she came back the second time and then they also found out about Rifthold. So Nesrin was kind of freaking out. So she went to see her family that was still in the city. Irene came back the second time. And then Hale tells her kind of about the Valg and like some of the stuff that had happened with that. Like he didn't give her the full story. He gave her just kind of enough. She goes to the library to look through some scrolls and books and other things that the librarian pulled for her. It's storming and she's reading and she finds the Song of Beginning or whatever. I just finished the chapter last night where she encounters something in the library and they like summon the guards and everything. I'm like way more invested in what's going on in Tower of Dawn. I am really enjoying this so far. I feel like Aelin and Adian are going to do some stupid things together. Dorian and Rowan are going to get to Skulls Bay after doing something stupid. Aelin and Adian and Lysandra are going to meet up with them. I understand why, at least a little bit. I understand why Tower of Dawn is its own separate book and not just like combined in with Empire of Storms. And of course, not having finished them, I do think the tandem read is probably the way to go. But I'll have some thoughts on that later.
Okay, so I am 222 pages into Empire of Storms and 264 pages into Tower of Dawn. I'm still really enjoying Tower of Dawn. I'm also loving Manon. She just fought her grandmother. Rowan and Dorian just got to Skulls Bay and met with Gavriel and Fenris. Elide and Lorcan are like just joined like the traveling circus. Yeah, I think that's all that happened in Empire of Storms. I only read another like 100 pages or so in here. I think the majority of my reading was in Tower of Dawn. Kale went to the tower and got like pulled off the horse and like manhandled by the acolytes, was rightfully like pissed about it since Irene like didn't ask his permission beforehand. They had that breakthrough with his toes where he can now wiggle his toes, and she told him about what happened to her mother, and then Hussar threatened Irene with like not letting her leave. Hussar was like, yeah, you'll get me this information or I'll never let you leave. So she got the information from Kale, and he unwittingly told her the correct place that Aelin was going, even though he was like, yeah, that's the last place she'll go, so I'll tell him. Nezrin and Sartok are like flying together, and like she and Kale are slowly drifting apart. Not that I dislike them together as a couple. Like I it feels a little bittersweet because I do think they could have like grown together, but also I think for them to be able to express like the truest parts of themselves with another person, I don't think they can be together. I think Nesrin and Sartok and Irene and Kale are endgame for each other. And I think eventually, I'm hoping what happens, slash predicting what happens, is that Nesrin stays and convinces Sartok to come to Adarlan's aid and like Terrasen and everything when like the big final battle happens. Oh, and then we also got the big reveal about Manon's father. The what is it? The yielding? That's gonna be a disaster. That's coming. That one's gonna hurt. I already know. I don't know what it is, what it's gonna involve, but it's gonna hurt. I hope that Manon goes to the Krokan witches and is like, hey, sorry for killing you all these years. But we should fight back against my grandmother because she's a cunt. I hope Manon gets the fight with her grandmother that she deserves. I'm liking certain parts of Empire of Storms better than others. Manon always, every time. Oh, and then Aelin just cleared out the Temple of Ilium, went to talk to Brannon. He told her to go find the lock in the wastes, the stone wastes or something. This is way more fun to me. I'll have to try and like pinpoint what exactly it is about this book that's so much more enjoyable. And it could just very well be that Aelin and the others are not the main characters. I want this, and then I want all of the Manon sections in one book, and that's it. Oh, and we also found out about the Armada. So where they've like fought the final battle for like Adarlan and Terrasen against Erewhon and either killed him or, sent him back into the void. And then Maeve is gonna strike at the very end. That's my guess. I don't know if they'll go to battle in this book or it'll be the beginning of Kingdom of Ash and then Mabel strike in that one, but I feel like it's building up to strike at the end of Empire of Storms. Kale and Irene had that moment in like the after party opium thing. I do have to say her clothes are getting better and better in these old covers. Because like I may or may not do another update today, depending on how far I get in my read. Also, just remembered that Nesrin sings as well. So she is yet another piece
of the accomplished young lady who also can kill you. Like all the mass heroines all rolled into one would be one accomplished, stabby young lady. Since the last update, Aelin has arrived at Skulls Bay. Yeah, so she made an appearance at Skulls Bay and talked to Rolf. And then Elide and Lorcan are with the traveling caravan. And then it comes out that Rolf is the descendant of the Mycenaeans. Oh, and Aedion had his confrontation with his father. I am this far into Tower of Dawn. Nezrin went off with Sartok and they like go off to the Eyrie and they like fly and everything, and then they meet Falcon. He's the one who gave 20 years of his life for some amount of spider silk. And so they meet up with him because he thinks the big spider things are back, and he's been talking to Sartok's Hearth Mother and like follows Nezrin and Sartok to like the tower. They think that they're back and they're hunting the Rooks. And then they find out that he's a shifter as well. He doesn't have as good of a handle on it as Lysandra does. And like I think they're finally starting to, or like Lysandra's starting to like realize some of the limits to her power, to like, oh, it takes a lot more energy to like turn into something large versus like a bumblebee and a bird and a mouse, and like she can do that like really quickly. And I am probably in the minority, and I think this is the best book in the series, probably because it has nothing to do with anything else that's going on. Honestly, I'm liking the side characters like Manon and Elide in Empire of Storms. I'm liking their POVs way more. This book is as good as it is, has been a problem because I'm like, oh, this is desert fantasy. This is like all of the things that I really like, a lot of things that I really love in fantasy. And it's made me want like a very specific flavor of book, but I can't put my finger on it, like exactly what I want. And so I've been like trying to mood read. When you have a book that you're like, God, like I want to read this because it would hit like every box, and then you can't remember what book it is. Like the one that you've like read and you're just like, oh yeah, like I want to go back and like reread this, and you're like, what book is it? But I'm like, no, like what I'm looking for is like a fantasy desert world, and I can't figure out what is exactly it is that I'm wanting. So this has been a problem. This is probably an insanely unpopular opinion, like best book in the series because it doesn't involve Aelin. It has been quite a while since I made any progress on this. Fingers crossed I will get this finished this weekend. I finally made some more progress. I swear getting me to read these books is like, it's felt like pulling teeth. I don't know, it's like I'll read them and be like, oh yeah, okay, like I want to continue. But then if like I go more than a couple days, I'm like, do I actually care though? Manon and Elide are my favorites. Like they're a Dorian as well, at least in Empire of Storms. I just finished like the like huge chunk, the like 20 chapter chunk in Empire of Storms. So I have probably 200 pages left, but it's gonna be way more like flip floppy. And then there's like a final like 60 page chunk. So there was the Battle of Skulls Bay where Lysandra turns into the sea dragon, and then Aelin took out a bunch of ships, but then she got possessed by Deanna, who told her again about the lock. The town that Elide and Lorcan were in got attacked. Aelin and her cadre are like on their way to Ilway to try and get to the salt marshes to go find the lock that she's been told about twice now. They're on their way when Manon finds them. I gotta say, I found it really tiresome that Aelin was like Manon was like, I recommend you do like this. And it was like a really basic, like, don't expect XYZ, or like, I can't remember the comment, but it was like, Aelin was just like, if I wanted your advice, I would ask, like, just was like all like pissy and defensive. And I was like, you're being called on your shit because you deserve to be called on your shit. And she doesn't know you other than like the like 2 or 3 interactions that you've had. She doesn't have like all this other experience with you that everyone else does. So, like, why would she trust you or know what your capabilities are? And Aelin was just like immediately got defensive. And I was like, okay, I think this relationship type is like very of its time. I don't know, like Manon could be a friend and an ally and will likely become a friend and an ally by the end of this. Like, you're gonna just start off treating her like shit. Like, also, she saved Dorian multiple times. So I don't know. And I really loved when Dorian was like, I'm a king too, so I'm gonna vouch for her and you're gonna deal with it. And I don't think he should have apologized to Rowan because he called Aelin on her bullshit. She deserved it. They were talking about letting Manon out on deck. Aelin makes the comment that I highly doubt it was because she, after her, or I highly doubt it was because she, in her 100 years of killing, decided your pretty face would turn her good. And Dorian replied, yours turned Rowan from 3 centuries of a blood oath. And I don't think he should have apologized because where's the lie? If she can't handle someone calling her on her bullshit, then why the hell is she going to be queen? Like, she doesn't deserve it. She is forgetting that there is a literal other monarch with them, and now Manon as well. Alid and Lorcan were also found by Vernon, who is an absolute twat. I cannot wait to see what she dreams up for him in terms of his death. I think Lorcan finally realized that Elide was serious about never going back to Morath. And he was like, oh, like, you mean it. And they like have a moment and she shows him the word key, and he also realizes that the one that Aelin gave him is fake. I have to say, I am really glad to be back in Tower of Dawn for my next little chunk. I do think there's going to be way more flip-flopping until we get to the end of both of these books. So I have probably 200 pages in Empire of Storms and maybe 250 in Tower of Dawn. We found out that The Mummy is being released in theaters for its 25th anniversary. So Damien and I are going to go see that on Saturday. I'm like really in a desert fantasy mood. I finished Joust. It didn't like hit the spot, but it was like you know when you want like brownies but you only have chocolate and you're like, I guess like that's fine. It was kind of like that, and I feel like The Mummy will fit right in too. So I have so many other things that I'm like in progress with too, that I'm like, how much do I really want to like derail everything by just being like, okay, time to read 15 desert fantasy novels, because this book got me like feeling unhinged about what my brain is craving. Maybe I will be back with an update tonight, maybe tomorrow. We'll see. So I made a ton of progress in my reading. We found out like a shit ton of stuff. So in Empire of Storms, we got to their battle in the Wastes with the Ilken Horde, and then the reunion with Elite and Lorcan, and Lorcan being like, I wanted to go to Parenth with you, and everyone's like sleeping together, Dorian and Manon, which I was like, yeah, do it. So did Kale and Irene. So they meet Maeve's Armada. They have like a day to decide, and then Rowan goes to see his cousins and asks for their help. Lysandra attacks some of the ships underwater as her sea dragon form, and then Elide gets taken to shore, where she is greeted by a mysterious person coming through the mists on the beach. But then in Tower of Dawn, things get really interesting. There's the scene where Kale gets like ambushed at dinner with all this random information from, so it was Hussar and Argun, and they like ganged up on him at lunch one day, and then he and Irene like argued, and like she like pushed him, and so he's like started to be able to walk and has like continue training with the guards, and then like goes and confronts the Kagan. That doesn't go well. That might have been before their argument. I don't. And then she tricks Hussar into throwing her a birthday party out in the desert at the oasis, and then they find
like the ruins of the Fae city and like the carvings on the wall in the desert are like battles between the Fae and the Vogue, even though they didn't think that the Fae had ever come to the southern continent. Kale's theory is like, oh, what if they were hiding their ancestors in plain sight as these famous healers? But then out in the Eyrie, Falcon is getting better and they're still going to the other watchtowers, but they have backup with them. Vorta goes with them, and then they meet Yaron, who is her betrothed. I can't decide if they like actively dislike each other or if it's just like a like each other eventually. Nezrin and Sartok decide that there needs to be something different done, and so they go and fly over the Daigle Fells and fall into the trap with the hatchling because Euron had reported that other hatchlings, like eggs and hatchlings, had been stolen. So they go and get caught. Falcon saves them, and then Kadara is like comes back and helps, and then Sartok gets like dragged away at one point. Oh, and then Kale also like figured out like what the darkness was inside him. Irene finds out about the secret library in Hafiza's office, but then like I think probably the most important bit of information that we discover is that the story the spider tells Nezrin about Maeve. I don't know if I should say because I feel like that's a pretty big deal. But she tells us an important story about Maeve and like that they're waiting for her. Oh, and then Falcon says he is looking for a younger shifter, and Ezra is like, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I really appreciated Irene pushing Hassar into the pool. I'm sure this will end on a hefty cliffhanger. Also, another like random note, I feel like when I'm reading it, I am enjoying it. It's just been like having to put it down and then like get back into it. I feel like for a lot of like the characters, I like everyone, obviously everyone has their favorite characters, but I'm like I care way more about the characters Tower of Dawn than I do in Empire of Storms. But I'm also like I care about everyone but like Rowan and Aelin in Empire of Storms. Like I like Lorcan and Elide. I like Dorian and Manon. I even like Gavriel and Fenris. Like I feel like I kind of like suffer through the Aelin scenes. Oh, she called Ansel up and they united with Ansel as well. That was another big thing. Yet again, not telling anyone her plans. I'm like, that's gonna be a problem for you in the future. Oh, and then they found the mirror and Manon and Aelin jumped in and I think are seeing a bunch of memories at this point. And like how Elena basically like failed, did stupid things. She did things in an attempt to save people without having the full picture and like full information. And I feel like that's kind of how everyone, or like how at least Aelin operates in this book. And like there's a lot of similarities between your MO and Elena's MO. Anyway, I'm gonna go read the rest of these books. What you do, baby? Look at him. Look at him. Anyway, we're just gonna do a little like voiceover for the baby. I finished both of these. I finished Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. This was a wild ride. This was a wild ending. I think I had seen some fan art of Empire of Storms, so like I knew that Aelin was captured by Maeve, and then a bunch of people arrived, and then we also find out about like the price she has to pay, she or Dorian has to pay, and like the history of all of that. And I am really glad to see the 13 back again because they're some of my faves. But I'm glad that Maeve decided to sever the bond with Gabriel and Lorcan. I want to know how Galen and Adian know each other. I think Karen is going to meet a bad end. I hope Fenris makes it up away from, what's her face? Maeve. There we go. I got to the end of Tower of Dawn as well, obviously. This was also wild. They like figured out that Irene could heal the people who had been enslaved by the Valg and could train others to do so, I imagine. And they were, like going to go to Hafiza and obviously she was gone, and then they went down into the, I guess, I don't know if catacombs, like tunnels. They encountered Duva. I have to say, I'm a little annoyed that Kale is now limited the way he is, like after she had already healed him. It feels like when women have to give up their power, it feels like that. Like, I know it affects him, but it also is like she put so much work into this and so much, like, learned so much and like healed him and made like so much progress with this like one thing that like it feels similar because it's like taking that away from her. And like I know that he, like, it's like connected to her, but it bothered me. And then Sartak and Nezran came back, got there like just in time to help. The aftermath of that was getting the Kagan's approval to take their armies and various forces abroad to help. I feel like Tower of Dawn is still my favorite. I love I love the setting and I like Sartak and Nezran, and I really like Irene and like Kale's journey of like self-forgiveness and all of that. I feel like one of the things that Sarah J. Maas does really well is like describing the sense of like feeling like you've come home, just like the rest of the world falls away. But like I think she does a really good job of describing those things, and like that feeling you experience it in this book a lot, but then you also experience it, what's the second Akatar book, Akamath, like when Farah is in like Rhysand's court and she just is like can just like be. So like I think she does a really good job of that. I really like reading that from her, and I think you get a lot of that in this book, less in Empire of Storms, unless you're talking about relationships like Elite and Lorcan, and like the relationship that Manon has with her 13, and like a little bit her relationship with Dorian. Like it's more relationships between people in this one, and then like a place and people in this one. I get why you would do the tandem read, because like leaving things on like this cliffhanger and then having to go through nothing like related, you're just like, oh, okay, well, that's a long slog. And it's like a lot to remember all of the events of Empire of Storms, probably going into Kingdom of Ash. I think I would do the tandem read again because I really liked being able to see where the events in Tower of Dawn lined up with the events in Tower of Empire of Storms. I probably should have just like tabbed the sections, but that was not the thought in my head when I had Damien help me put the things in. So, but that means I am done with 2 fat books. I am so excited because this month has been like not super great in terms of reading. I'm gonna start Kingdom of Ash, 980 pages. Ah, nobody mentioned this. Sorry, buddy. Hi, hi, hey, you baby. Hey, you baby. I'm gonna go put these in my reading tracker and I think maybe get a snack or something. Hi, what are you doing? Don't go on my couch. Don't go on my couch. What are you doing? Are you going down? Are you going down behind the couch? Oh my gosh. What are you doing? Do you need like a pillow for it? You are so funny. Let me see if I can. Oh. Whoa. It was like down in the crevice. Whoa. You going back down? You go back down? What are you doing? Did you like something? Whoa. What are you doing? What do you do? Oh, so sorry, baby. Oh my gosh. What are you doing?
so fun. So I have made it, 167 pages into Kingdom of Ash. Aelin is back in Maeve's clutches. Manon made contact with the Crocon witches and slaughtered the Yellow Legs. Weren't following them. Rowan and his group that are going after Aelin have found, or like they got the sense that they needed. They like realized that she was north. Oh, Erewhon also knows that the Aelin that is Lysandra is, if you can hear the, where's your mouse? Where's your mouse? Have you lost Yellow Mouse? Have you lost Yellow Mouse? Where is it? You stalking your brother now? Hi. Hey, Boo. Can you come rescue Yellow Mouse?
Hi. You ready? Oh, it's right here, you goof. Literally right in front of me. Want somebody to help him?
Yeah. He saw me watching him and was like, Erewhon found out that Lysandra is not Aelin. Wow, that's too close. Adian's being kind of a prick. I kind of thought they were past that, so it's a little annoying. Oh, and then they met the spider that stole, I assume, Falcon's 20 years and a little bit of his power. So she taught Dorian maybe how to shift, and then he killed her, and hopefully that means that Falcon got his 20 years back. Is Irene pregnant? That's what I want to know. Their scout realized that Aniel was going to be next. So Kale and Irene were going to be on their way. I don't understand how they're going to fly on Rooks when they have never flown. Assumedly have never flown up until this point. So I finally sat down and read more of Kingdom of Ash. So I read probably 350, 360 pages. And now, yeah. Are you bringing me your bag? Hi. Is it a noodle? Hi. Is this yours? Oh my gosh. Are you such a good boy? What are you doing? Hi. What do you need? Oh, come here. Oh, come here. Yeah. Look at this noodle. Look at this noodle. Where are you going? Where are you going? He's watching Damien mow. And then baby boy is up there just napping away. I still have about 400 pages left. The goal is to finish that today. And oh my god, there was so much that happened in these like 350 pages. It was kind of nuts. I will do my best to remember the correct order of things, even though I just read this yesterday. That'll help, maybe. So they found Aelin, freed her, got her the iron off of her, and then got out of Wendlin. Aniel is under siege, and like there's the big reunion. Adion is a dick.
Lorcan and the lead kind of make up. I love the fact that Fenris was like, yeah, my family name's Moonbeam. Manon goes to the Omega and talks to the Iron Teeth, which is like, you've been lied to and we can be better. The three matrons come and find their encampment. She kills the Yellowlegs matron, the blue whatever. Yeah. So she kills the Yellowlegs matron, and the blue blood matron leaves, and then her grandmother flees. Oh, and then the dam, like at the siege of Aniel, the dam breaks, and Aelin goes out and stops it. There were so many parts of that where I was just visualizing a ton of like the Lord of the Rings, like the movie versions of Lord of the Rings, like the fights. I was imagining like a combo of Helm's Deep, Gondor, Isengard, where the Ents break the dam and release the river, and that's what I was picturing for that part. And then when they fling the heads of the soldiers that they came across that were going to help Aedion and his men, Ansel's men that were supposed to come when they like catapulted their heads, I was like, oh, that's like the Siege of Gondor. A little bit of Helm's Deep with some of like the siege engines and like the siege towers and ladders coming to the walls of Aniel. I don't know if that just says a lot about how many times I've seen Lord of the Rings. Okay, we need to just take a moment and okay. Now zoom in. Look at these beans. Ooh. Oh my god. And then Dorian has figured out how to shift. He's figured out how to get his magic to do that. Manon offers to marry him if he won't go to Morath and try and find the third key. Obviously, he doesn't. He's like, no, you don't want to marry me. I asked my friend, I was like, okay, does Nezrin live? Because, like, that's what I want. Like, I want Nezrin and Sartok to be okay. Like, they're my favorite pair. At this point, I'm like, they've mentioned the yielding too many times for it not to happen. I really hope it's not Manon, or that she makes it so there's some way that like Manon survives it. I really hope Abraxos is not a part of this. Like, he's too, I think losing him would like break her. I could see Gabriel because he's not paired off with someone. I mean, like, he sort of is with Aedion. She's already made it so like Dorian can't have an actual relationship with his father, and like taken that opportunity away from a main character. I don't know that she would do the same to Aedion, but if like it had to be one of like the cadre, and because he hasn't taken the blood oath yet, I could see that being him. I could see Falcon, and I could see Hassar. I don't know if I could see Borta, but I could see like Yaron of the Rook Riders. I could see Ren and Nox as well. I would say Nox over Ren because Ren has to like give his vote of approval for Aelin to become queen against Darrow. I could see Darrow dying. That's too convenient, though. We also find out that Irene is pregnant. Oh, and then Kale has promised land to the wild men in the Fangs to like guarantee safe passage through the Fangs, like to get up to Terrasen. Like a messenger has come, like Terrasen calls for aid, kind of thing. It gave me such Gondor calls for aid. How many times have you watched this, Sarah? Because it's showing up in your book. They're getting ready to go north. Oh, and then Kale's father tries to bribe him with like a chest of letters that he never sent him from his mother. And so Kale is like, oh, so she did write me all these years and you just didn't send them. So she thought I never replied. What an asshole. Yeah. What are you doing, buddy? Yeah. Are you back? Are you back from doing noodle things? Yeah. And then there was a scene they showed Irene. This comes back to me asking a friend if Nezrin dies.
moment a second ago. Yeah, so I asked my friend, I was like, who's read the series, I was like, does Nesrin die? Because I love her. And she was like, oh, was that Kale's? And I was like, yeah. And she didn't finish what she was saying because I was like, oh, like that's the one who, like, she's the one who travels with Kale to, or it is like, because I had said like captain, like she's like the captain of the guard. And she was like, oh yeah, she has a really pivotal role to play, or like important role or something. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And now after reading this section where they go, Kale takes Aelin to see Irene like removing the Valg from inside a person. Now I'm like, oh, it's Irene because she's gonna be able to like purify whatever. Now I'm like, okay, so what does it mean for Nesrin and Sartok? Should I be worried now? My goal is to finish this today. Oh my goodness. I just realized there's a Cecil man. Ugh. Look at him. Look at him. He's in his favorite spot to sleep is in this basket on like the side of the cat tower. It's his favorite spot. He's either there in one of our window loungers, and that's about it. I think I can finish this today. At this point, I'm like, yeah, well, now I need to know. But I also like just want to be done. This has taken me so much longer than I thought it would. Yeah, I thought this was going to take me like a month. And here we are, 4 months later. I'm going to need an SJM break for a while. Except I do still have Flame and Shadow to read. I heard it's not great. Wish me luck in these last 400 pages. I am guessing it's going to be a lot of emotional damage. I have this much left of this book. I'm on page 869. I guess I got through like 3 of the 400 pages last night, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. It was like 1:45, and I was like, I still have 100 pages left, or like I have just over 100 pages left. We are. Oh, hey. I feel like I needed some time to just like sit and like process it and then get through the rest of the 100 pages. Some of the deaths that I predicted came true. I am mad about them, even though I knew they were coming. Like I'm mad because it was some of my favorite, like some of the characters that I really liked. Like it fit with kind of their character, I guess. It's just like always kind of a bummer when you're like, I really liked them. Even when you see it coming and you're just, and then there was one that I didn't predict, but it was kind of, it's because I kind of forgot about the character, and I was just like, man, before it happened, I was like, oh, yeah, well, that's gonna hurt. So the stuff with like the lock and the keys, when I was like, that feels like possibly a little like anticlimactic. Like, I don't know, like that there's still this whole battle left. I wasn't expecting Dorian's father to show back up. Like, yeah, I'm glad she was able to open up the world in the back of their world when they decided to like not take Erewhon with them because she wanted to try and save Elena. Man, I feel like she should have been like, all right, well, then I'm not opening the door for you. That's it. That was like such a frustrating thing. And then the whole trope that like she pulled the same shit with Nesta. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of women in fantasy having to give up all or most of their power to save the world. Like, and it just is so infuriating now that she doesn't have this bottomless pit of power. I suspect that something is going to happen for either Maeve or Erewhon. I think it's going to be Erewhon that this happens with, but I think they're going to be able to contain him or incapacitate him, and he's going to be pitted against Irene and all of the healers that are there. And I think that's what's going to happen with Erewhon, is that he's going to be like purged. I don't understand if he's in his own body or if he's like possessing someone from this world. I kind of suspect that Manon is going to kill Maeve, because Maeve is going to go after Dorian if she gets the chance
for cutting off her world walking magic. Some of the deaths that I was thinking were going to happen have not happened yet. There's still 100 pages left for more emotional damage. I was kind of ranting to Damien about this. He fell asleep on the couch while I was reading, and I woke him up and I was like, let me tell you about all of all of the moments that made me think of Lord of the Rings in these last 300 pages. There are some things where I was like, this feels almost word for word for some specific lines. And like, yes, I understand that there's only so many ways to say the same thing. There's a line where it's like, fall back to the city. And all I'm thinking of is Faramir in Return of the King saying, fall back to Minas Tirith. Like that's what I'm hearing in my head. And yes, I know it's not exactly the same. And like, there's only so many ways to say, like, but she could have been like, retreat. And then there's a line from Manon where she's with Abraxos and they have like days left or hours or whatever. It's one of the nights, and he, like, they're just sitting together and she says, I wish I could have seen it. I wish I could have seen the waste just once, or something along the lines of, I wish I could have seen it one time. And I was like, okay, well, that's definitely, I wish I could have held it one last time with Bilbo in the cart on the way to the ship to the Undying Lands. There's obviously so much different from Lord of the Rings. Like, this is not like plot-wise, character-wise at all like Lord of the Rings. There are just a lot of mental and visual parallels for me, at least, between these movies and some of the scenes in here. Oh, and then there's like when Lysandra turns into the river dragon and the forces from Morath are like, oh, she must have popped out of somewhere, and so they try and go do the same thing at Helm's Deep where they're like trying to like explode open the wall through this grate. The one thing that I really enjoyed was like the two like huge Easter eggs when after Mala gives her like the little nugget of power to like get her back home, and she's falling through the worlds on her way back to Erelia, and we see, yeah, she passed through a world of oceans with no land to be seen. She passed through a world where a great city had been built along the curve of a river, the buildings impossibly tall and glimmering with lights, clearly Crescent City. She passed through a world of snow-capped mountains under shining stars, passed over one of those mountains where a winged male stood beside a heavily pregnant female, gazing at those very stars. Fae. They were Fae, but this was not her world. She flung out a hand as if she might signal them, as if they might somehow help her when she was nothing but an invisible speck of power. The winged male, beautiful beyond reason, snapped his head toward her as she arced across his starry sky. He lifted a hand as if in greeting. A blast of dark power like a gentle summer night slammed into her, not to attack her but to slow her down. A wall, a shield that she tore and plunged through, but it slowed her. That winged male's power slowed her just enough. And then she like arrives back in her world. And I'm like, okay, well, we know that there's that possibility then, since Bryce ends up in Akatar world. For Manon and some of these other characters, I would keep these books. But then that nugget, I'm like, I feel like I would want to come back and like read that. There's a lot that I really dislike about this series. There's a lot that I dislike, but then there's a lot that I'm like, I mean, this is fine, I guess, but it could be better. And some of it that I feel like is like a slog. And then there's some parts where I'm like, wow, this is like really cool, really awesome. And like, I wish we had more of this. I think Darrow has just adopted Evangeline. Rowan is separated from Aelin. And then one of the deaths that happened that I predicted, and I'm salty about all of them that I predicted that have come true, but it like just happened. So I got through a lot of the battle. I got through some of the deaths that I was expecting but exceptionally displeased about. And then I got through her going like them going to Indovir to forge the lock. Oh, and then I forgot to say last time that Falcon got his youth back, his power and his youth. The Antican army and the Rooks and Aelin and her, I guess cadre is not necessarily the right word, but cadre basically. And then like Kale and Dorian and the wild men, or that force has arrived on the battlefield and is like ripping into the 100,000. Well, I assume it's less than 100,000 at this point, but the remaining warriors, the remaining army from Morath. But then I think Nezrin has just seen the remaining like 20,000 that are full of like the Valg princes and the 6 Karankui spiders with the princesses in them, and then Erewhon and Maeve. Oh, and then we also got through oh yeah, okay, so Dorian also, he had summoned Kaltain on accident, and he went to Morath, found the 3rd key, worked with Maeve, betrayed her, cut off her ability to walk through worlds. So Hugh takes my hair ties, and what he does is like he'll take them, play with them, and then he'll go drop them in his food bowl. And so he just went and picked one up and took it over and had a snack. And now I think he's leaving. Yeah. What do you? Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. What? Whoa. Hi. Hi. What are you doing? You just have a lot to say? What do you do? What are you doing? Hi. Oh, is it mouse time? Hey, baby.
Whoa.
Whoa. No.
I'm gonna throw it for you, kitty.
Oh.
And over here, you can show off your skills.
He's like, why have you put me here? On that note, I'm gonna go finish my emotional damage and come back with some more thoughts once I'm done. All right, I've done it. I've finished the last 100 pages of emotional damage. I'm a little salty about some of the people who died. Most of the predictions that I had came true. Some of them did not, but I do think some of them were a stretch. And then there was one surprise that I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about him. I do think it was a well-rounded like completion of the series. It answered a lot of questions. It like wrapped up everyone's thread of the story really well. The one thing that I wish we had seen was at like the very end when they're talking about like the theater. I wish we had seen the theater, or like the dance lady from, I think the last time we saw her was probably Heir of Fire or Queen of Shadows, when people were fleeing Rifthold. She was like, wherever you go, I'll come. And I wish we had seen her show up with her troupe of dancers. Like, I feel like that is like the one thing that I was like, oh, you mentioned the theater. Like, that would have been perfect to like include that, but she didn't. And like, I feel like that was a missed opportunity. But the rest of it, I was like, okay, you answered questions. Like, it's not everything is like a firm yes or no on some things. Like, oh, are they for sure going to be together? You know, we didn't get like full answers on that, but it was like enough to be like, probably. Or, you know, it was like they're going to go do this thing and then like in time come back together kind of thing. The things that people were working towards were all discussed, like Manon and the witches went back to the wastes, and Irene being the heir of the tower, like that was discussed, like what she was going to do, what they were going to do. Nezrin and Sartok. And I wish we had a little bit more time with like the wolf people. One thing that kind of irked me, I was like, okay, if you had this plan and these word marks that could like open a portal, why didn't you do that with the whole army instead of waiting days to like rush to get there? Whoa. We are sprinting. It's sprinting time. Hi, baby. Look at this man. Oh, boy. Oh, my gosh. There you are. Yeah? What are you guys doing? Here, do you need me to open this window? It's just this. There you go. There you go, buddy. These two are so gossipy, so nosy. They like to see whatever, they like to see everything that's going on. I do feel like this was a well-rounded conclusion to the series. I wish we had gotten a little bit more of the princes and princesses from the Southern Empire, because like we really only got a few scenes with them throughout the whole. What are you two doing? We're wrestling. Oh no. I want you to zoom. My God. Babies. Hey. What are you two doing? Hey. Get him, baby. Whoa. I feel like their time to really shine was in Tower of Dawn. Now I wish there was more that we saw of them like actively rebuilding this world and not just like, oh, that's what they're gonna do now. And like that's kind of true for me for a lot of fantasy. I'm glad Darrow finally came around to Lysandra. I really like the reminder of what Aelin told Evangeline, like, win me a kingdom. I kind of wanted Elide to have found some power, but I feel like she's so clever and sharp-minded that she doesn't necessarily need magic to complement it. But it would have been nice if she had somehow found, since she has like witch blood, or at the very least that there was an acknowledgement that like, oh yeah, like she could be immortal or something, to like live with Lorcan and like live with him forever. And I did really like the way that Maeve and Erewhon were handled, like how they met their ends. I thought that was really well done. The people who needed that closure and that opportunity for Maeve got it, and the way that Erewhon was handled was, well, I thought well done as well. It felt really performative, her giving Gavriel the blood oath after he got. She opened the portal for the wolf riders. That's when I was like, why didn't she do this earlier with the army? And I don't know if it's just like a scale thing or if it takes too much magic. It wasn't well explained like why she couldn't have used it earlier for the army when they were like 6 days away. Yeah, it just says a teeming mass of people. What? Okay. Amongst them largest horses, wolves growled, wolves with riders. Down the battlefield, portal after portal opened, and beyond each portal, that teeming mass of people could be seen, the army. So you're telling me that they could have gotten the entire military might of the Southern Kingdom that had come to Orinth so much earlier. And I'm like, it's like that shit that like gets me. Yeah, you too, Cecil? I don't know if you guys heard that, but he had something to say. So it's like, it's things like that where I'm like, this wasn't explained well enough for me, and some of my favorite people could still be alive. I do think it's well rounded in the fact that it like ties off all the threads for all of the main characters that we would want answers for. The pacing was really good throughout. Yeah, I do feel like there were like natural stopping points throughout Kingdom of Ash. Again, I can like take a breath and just like sit with it for a minute and like process all the things. I wish a couple things had been handled a little bit differently. I wish we had gotten to see Gavin like one more time, or Brannon one more time through Dorian and him summoning them. But I think it would have been really hard for them to hear that Elena's spirit was destroyed. I wish we had seen Kale reunite with his actually seen Kale reunite with his mother and his brother. I think of all of these books, I think Tower of Dawn is my favorite, and I'm probably in like extra minority for that. It just was completely different from the rest of the series in terms of like setting and like the feel of the world, and it was just such a like a kind of like a refreshing deviation from the norm that I was like, oh, I really enjoyed this. And like it set me on this whole path of like, you have to read some desert fantasy right now. And then I really liked Lysandra and Falcon's meeting. I still think that Nehemiah's death in Throne of Glass, the first book in the series, I still think it was kind of a waste and kind of just dramatic, like pun intended, overkill. Literally, they had one conversation about things, and then she died. Like she arranged for her own death, and I was just like, it still seems really excessive to me. Yeah, so I still think that was like such a waste of a character. Definitely fridging, feels like. And I kind of feel the same way about this series that I do about the Earthsea Quartet by Ursula Le Guin, where the last book is the best book, and it's kind of a shame that you have to read all of the other books ahead of it to understand the last one. It's kind of unfortunate that you have to like truly get the context of Tower of Dawn. You have to read all 5 or 6 books ahead of it to like really get it, or at the very least, I mean, at the very least, the story in Assassin's Blade. I don't know that I would read the series again, and so I'm like, do I keep this on my shelf? But I feel like there are such big Easter eggs in the last book when Aelin is falling through the worlds that I'm like, okay, clearly something like they're connected somehow, and I just don't know. I just don't know how yet. Obviously, I haven't read the latest Crescent City, Flame and Shadow, and like I feel like having that to refer back to would be good. Again, I'm tempted to like rip out all of the Manon sections from all of the previous books, combine them into one, and then keep Tower of Dawn and maybe Kingdom of Ash, I guess, since it has that Easter egg in it. Like it's very much a product of its time, and I don't necessarily know that that's for me anymore. I don't know if I would read these again. I think I would be really tempted to reread Tower of Dawn just kind of by itself, not as like a tandem read, because the tandem read was kind of a slog for me. I don't know that I loved the series. I can absolutely see why people do love the series, but for me, I think the biggest enjoyment was some like specific scenes and then like specific characters and character relationships. But I do think this is when Sarah J. Maas was being like actually really well edited and not just given free reign like she has with like House of Sky and Breath, and apparently Flame and Shadow is, I haven't heard great things. I can't decide if I want to keep it. I think I will keep it for now, but I can't see myself reaching for it. And I think if I give it a little bit of time, and if I'm like in like 6 months, I'm like, then I will redistribute it. For now, it'll stay on my shelf, mostly because like I try not to just do like knee-jerk unhaul kind of things unless it's like really bad, or if I'm just like, like if I know that I'm not gonna reread it, I'm like, a better more okay with parting with it. But for a series like this where I'm like, okay, like some of these I've had for a long time, but then a couple I got this year, like the last two, and then Assassin's Blade I got this year. And so I'm like, okay, I literally just got these. Like, let me hold on to them for more than a few months. I feel like I would actually want to reread Tower of Dawn, but I'm a little worried that I would be like, okay, what's going on again? But it's also pretty far removed from the rest of the conflict, and I also don't know that I totally care about Aelin as a character. I mean, like, yes, I am glad that she won and like did all these things and was saved and like had all these accomplishments and wins and things. Like I like Lysandra and Nesrin and Irene and Elide and Manon, like so much more. And like I liked seeing like their stories. I do have to say I did really like that as the series went on, her relationships grew and became like more or like grew and like matured and like really solidified with some of these other like really strong badass women, and that she has these as her friends as she's about to go try and rebuild her country, and that she has them if she like needs them, like needs to call for aid or even just wants like a friendly voice. And I do really like the female friendships in this. I not at the beginning. I think some of the relationships, like where like Caltaine was concerned, and like a little bit her like beginning relationship with Lysandra. I'll have to calculate the total number of pages in this series, at least in the editions that I have, and I'll put them up here. I don't know that I would hate coming back into this world if she decided to do like a continuation series or anything like that, or if the characters that were in these books are brought into the rest of like Crescent City Akatar crossover situation. I think overall I am more invested in some of the side characters than in like Aelin and then Aelin and Rowan. It was a really interesting experience to like see those first few novels and be like, wow, okay, like this is like clearly a debut, and then like this is like okay, you know, like we're advancing and we're doing all these things. I do think it is a really solid series overall, and it definitely gets better as you continue through the series. I can't say that it's like a new all-time favorite, but that was really a really rambly wrap up. Anyway, thanks for watching this journey of emotional damage with me. What? Thanks for coming on this journey to emotional damage with me. There we go. The friend that I asked about Nesrin and she thought I meant Irene, I told her today, I was like, oh, I finished last night. And she was like, huh, did you cry? And I was like, yeah, of course I did. Like some of my favorite characters died. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time and happy reading. Bye.